All right. I am calling the remote Londonderry Budget Committee meeting. Today is May 28th, 2020. The time is 7:03 p.m. As mentioned, we are doing this meeting remote, and I have a prepared statement in accordance to the right to know law. So as chair of the Budget Committee, due to the COVID-19 coronavirus crisis, in accordance with the Governor Sununu's Emergency Order 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this committee is authorized to meet electronically. Please note there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously. Did I mess that up? To the meeting, which is authorized pursuant to the Governor's Emergency Order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, this is to confirm that we are providing a public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We are using Zoom webinar platform for this electronic meeting. All members of the board have the ability to communicate can someone help me pronounce that?
Contemporaneously.
Thank you. Video of this meeting. You may go, let me scroll back up. I accidentally hit the zoom down. During the meeting through the platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing the following phone number, 929-205-6099. And when prompted, enter the event ID 829-8895-0354. If you would like to watch the contemporaneous video of the meeting, you may go to zoom.com or use the Zoom app and type in the same webinar ID, and you use the dial by phone. On other computer or on either the computer or tablet, cell phone, you may use the raise hand feature to indicate you have interest in making comments to the committee. Otherwise, you may listen in as a phone participant, and you'll be recognized individually during any period of public comment for which there is public hearing on the agenda. Provide public notice of the necessary information of assessing the meeting. We previously gave the notice to the public of how to access the meeting via telephone dial-in information I just provided. Providing a mechanism for public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please email budgetcommittee@londonderrynh.org. Adjourning the meeting of the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event, scroll down. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting, we will adjourn the meeting and reschedule for a later date and time. Please know that all votes will be taken during this meeting and shall be done by roll call vote. We will start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, also please state whether there's anyone in the room with you during the meeting, which is required under the right to know law. So that being said, I will call you out by name as a committee member, and we'll go down the line. So I, Chad Franz, am present. No one is in the room. Mr. Kipp?
I, Jonathan Kipp, am present. No one is in the room with me.
Jennifer Kinney?
Hi, Jen Kenny, present. Nobody's in the room.
Kirsten?
Hi, Kirsten Hildenan, present. Nobody's in the room.
Christine?
Christine Patton, nobody is present in the room as of now, but my husband's roaming around the house, so he might pop in.
Very well. Steve?
Hi, Steve Bro, present. No one else is in the room.
Thank you. And Mr. Skolark?
Paul Skolark, present, and no one is in the room.
All right. So I will like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Let me share my screen of the American flag. And Mr. Kipp, may you please start us out?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
Republic
for which it stands,
stands
one
one
nation,
nation
Under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and
Justice.
justice.
for all. I'd also like a moment of silence for all the first responders, essential workers, those who are serving abroad, overseas, and locally as well. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Be seated. All right, so following down the agenda, I would like to open this time for public comments. What we will do, I see there's an attendee. They do have their hand raised for comments, so I will unmute. And Ms. Paul, you have your public comment.
Hi, Deb Paul here, Town Councilor. I just wanted to participate in your meeting, to listen to what you guys were doing, so thank you for inviting me.
Just further comment, if anyone, please, who are not on the committee, to please just state your name and address for the record. Can you please do that? Ms. Paul,
Yep.
can you state your name and address for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry. Deb Paul, 118 Hardy Road.
All right, thank you. Do you have any public comment other than what you
At the
stated?
moment, maybe later on.
All right, thank you.
Wanna-
I will, go ahead. All right, I will go ahead and mute you again. And please feel free during the second public comment to raise your hand if you have any thing you'd like to add. All right, any other individuals like to comment during this time? Seeing none, we will move forward. I had emailed out the, sorry, did someone say something? Go ahead.
Who's Amanda?
Amanda is, I'm sorry for, you're in charge of food services. Is that correct, Amanda?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Amanda Venencia, Director of Dining Services.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Christine, she gives us all that awesome food at the Deliberative.
Ah, okay. Keep up the good work.
Yes, we're known for our soup. You're welcome.
Well, that is a particular favorite of mine. You're not wrong, Amanda.
All right, so moving on, I had emailed out February's and May's minutes. Does anyone have any comments on February's minutes? And please, again, just a reminder, state your name when commenting. Seeing none, I'd like to vote on that. And again, we'll go through as a roll call vote. Do I have a motion to accept February 2020's minutes?
So moved, Mr. Chairman. Jonathan Kipp.
Thank you. Motion from
Christine Patton?
second from Christine. So again, we'll do a roll call vote, starting with seniority of billet and then seniority of who's been on longest. Actually, Kirsten and Christine, who's been on longer between you two?
Christine has.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, I'm so old.
And I will save my vote for the last. So Mr. Kipp, do you accept the February 2020 minutes? Mr.
Jonathan?
Kipp? Can you hear me?
I can now.
All right, do you accept February 2020 minutes?
I, Jonathan Kipp.
Okay. Jennifer Kinney,
Hi, Jen Kenny.
vote in the affirmative or?
Affirmative.
All right, thank you. Christine,
Affirmative.
can you state your name, please?
My name is Christine, and I vote affirmative to accept the minutes.
Thank you. Kirsten?
Kirsten Hildenen, affirmative.
Thank you. Mr. Burrow?
Steve Bro, affirmative.
Mr. Sklark? You're muted. Still muted.
I'm off now, right? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Am I able to vote on the February minutes?
Actually, thank you very much. My apologies. Since Mr. Clark and Ms. Kenny were not on the budget committee, their votes will be abstained. So the minutes are approved for February 2020. Now moving on to where was it? May 2020, which all of us were on the budget committee. We'll do the same thing. Does anyone have any comments regarding May 2020's minutes, draft minutes?
Yeah, just can,
It is
a couple of
May,
places.
so-
It's April's minutes, and for future reference, my name is Kirsten. That's all. If that can be
you.
amended, that'd be cool. Thanks.
And we'll make sure that happens in April's.
It's right everywhere except in the vote sections. In the vote sections, it all has, when it has my name, it's spelled incorrectly.
Well, thank you very much. We'll make sure that is corrected. All right. Any other amendments they'd like for April's 2020 minutes? All right. Seeing none, we'll go through a roll call vote. Mr. Kipp?
I motion
Yes.
to accept the minutes as amended.
Thank you. We have a motion to accept the minutes as amended. Do I have a second?
I second the motion to accept the April minutes.
All right. Second by Mr. Kipp. All right. Do I have a motion? Do I need a, so we'll do a roll call vote right now? All right. So Mr. Kipp, yay or nay for the April as amended minutes?
Jonathan Kipp, aye. I
Okay.
vote in the affirmative.
Thank you. Christine, or as you were, Ms. Kenny,
I, Jen Kenny, vote in the affirmative.
thank you. Christine,
I, Christine Patton, vote in affirmative.
Kirsten,
I, Kirsten Hildenan, vote in the affirmative.
Mr. Bro,
Steve Bro, affirmative.
and Paul,
I, Paul Sklark, in the affirmative.
and I, Chad Franz, in the affirmative. All right, thank you. Now moving on, everyone, I had forwarded out an email that we received from the assistant town manager regarding the video on demand right to know refresher meeting. I highly recommend all first and second year budget committee members to attend. It's very good information regarding the legal rights, protections, how to conduct business, communicate properly in this forum. And that will be held June 2nd, 2020 at 7 p.m. I did send out the invite. I'd like to kind of give them an idea of who will be attending. So I will be there. They said it should go to around 9:30, so 7 to 9:30. Jonathan, are you going to attend? We'll just go down through the line.
I do plan to attend, yes.
All right, Steve.
Yes, and Chad, I plan on attending.
Thank you. Mr. Sklark,
Yeah, I'll be on it.
Jen.
I plan on.
Okay. Christine and Kirsten, do you plan on attending?
I have a conflict that day. I won't be able to do it.
All right, thank you.
I'm not sure yet.
Okay. So I'll have Christine, I'll have you on there just to, so you can have the invite.
Now, is this still virtual? Because
Yes.
that's kind of later in the month, so I was wondering if, okay.
Yeah, it'll be via Microsoft Teams, which is similar to a Zoom platform, and that's how they'll be conducting that. So, does anyone have any questions regarding that? All right, moving on our agenda, we have the town finance director, Mr. Campo, is going to give us an update regarding the state of the town's budget, and you should be all set.
All righty, did you send out that email that I forwarded to you?
Yes, I did, and I will share my screen so the public
Perfect.
can see that, and I will also publish that in my in our minutes.
Perfect. So, as I'm sure you guys are aware, Kevin has been giving an update at the previous town council meetings, letting us know how it goes since we've been in a budget freeze most recently. We're currently around 86.7% when we should be at about 90.71, which is a good sign for the town as it goes. It is a little misleading as our invoices are typically processed on Friday, so it doesn't include this week's worth of invoices, which is around 50,000 spread throughout the different departments.
Do you have anything additional to add, Mr. Campo?
Nope, I just was waiting for questions before I got into the impact of COVID. I'm not sure if anybody had any, or if you want me to just move right on to the impact of COVID and.
Yeah, why don't you move on, and then we'll have questions from the committee after.
All righty. So as everyone's well aware, we're dealing with the COVID pandemic, which our public safety is on the front lines of that, having to deal with it repeatedly. So we have quite a bit of overtime and other expenses regarding that. The town, both fire department, police department, and myself have been working diligently to try and obtain as many grants as there are plenty out there currently to offset some of the expenses. At the last town council meeting, the council approved the acceptance of the Gopher grant, which is about $613,000, about closer to $614,000. That is a reimbursement process where the expenses we incur, we then request refund back for those. As you can see, this is, thank you so much for sharing the screen. You can see currently where all the departments are standing.
Hey, Justin, I've got a question, if I may.
Yes.
Yeah, just on the, I noticed the highway operations is about not even a 50% budget to this point. What do we expect out of that for the balance of this fiscal year?
So that's a tough one to determine because what happens is the road maintenance is more of a May through August situation.
Okay.
So what'll end up happening is we'll encumber funds for that to spend throughout there, and it's kind of back a year, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Justin, regarding the COVID-19 related expenses, is that something, did you say you're going to be able to break that out, or what do we think we're spending on that? Do we know?
Yes, I just filed a reimbursement for the Gopher grant, in which we are requesting about $4,500 back. In total, the invoices March and April, those that are not reimbursable or reimbursed through one of the several other grants, whether it's the supplemental assistance to firefighters or the Corona emergency supplemental funding through the Department of Justice, those total about $70,000.
Okay.
So 70,000. So what is the total expenses that is that we are going to have to pay out of pocket for due to the COVID, that we are not anticipating any expenses, or I'm sorry, reimbursement through grant or whatever revenue way of funding?
So that's a little difficult to tell right now because we haven't heard back from any of the grants on whether or not they're accepted. But we're hoping to have it as minimal as possible as we're applying for plenty of grants across the board.
Mm.
Do you have an anticipated dollar amount? Without, I mean, I understand that it's difficult. It's a difficult answer when you don't, there's a lot of factors that are still up in the air, but.
Right, that's a difficult question to answer because just recently the 25% FEMA match is now allowed to be done through the Gopher grant, which I believe about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, that wasn't the case. So it's constantly evolving, and if we don't get it in FEMA, we can apply for it through another grant. If we don't get it there, we can apply for it in the Gopher grant. So there's a lot of steps we can go through to try our hardest to get the reimbursements through it.
Is the Gopher grant, is that part of the CARES Act, or what is that?
Yes, that's the, so the CARES Act gave money to the states, and this is the states pushing it down through, the state pushing it down through the towns and counties.
Okay.
Justin, this question tags along with what Chad asked you, and I suspect the answer may be the same. However, what would your projection be for end of this fiscal year at this point?
For what we will have unexpended?
No, getting away just from COVID, what would our budget situation be at the end of the year? End of June?
So getting away from COVID, just under, yep. We will be under the budget as legally required. It's going to potentially be, I mean, at this point, it's kind of guessing as COVID keeps evolving and things keep piling and piling, and depending on when the reimbursements come, depends on whether or not we can offset it with this year's budget or it goes as unanticipated revenues towards next year's budget. But some of the projections I potentially have, if you give me 1 second here. Again, this is an estimate, but I'd say you're probably around maybe 400,000, depending on how this goes, and as well as several other factors coming in June.
And then please remind us, let's use the number of 400,000 as your estimate. What then happens to that money?
That money then turns into the undesignated fund balance.
Okay.
Is there still a budget freeze? Is it town manager? Is that still imposed?
We're still keeping that imposed because as I want to emphasize, we don't know what the impact of COVID is going to be throughout this month, the rest of this month and next month, and how that's going to impact the budget.
Okay.
I mean, you're looking at a large sum of money that we're hoping to get reimbursed for, but you don't want to put your eggs in the hope basket and end up out of trouble there.
Justin, can you speak a little bit to the impact on the revenue side, both this year and looking ahead to the next fiscal year? Because this has been about expenditures, but what impact are you seeing from COVID on the revenue side?
So things on the revenue side currently, and I did not send that out to you, I apologize. I meant to. They're not looking as good as they normally would. However, they are still in track and online for the most part. Those numbers right now are a little skewed because we have 2 items that we know we're getting for a large amount of money. It's our cable revenue, as well as the payment in lieu from the airport, which roughly brings us about around a little above 700 or 800,000. So that is expected to come in next week or within the next couple of weeks and be attracted to it. However, next year is where it's really going to impact us, because as the state is shut down, a large source of our revenue comes from meals and rooms, highway block grant, which comes from gas tax. And if people aren't driving, they're not having the gas tax. It's not being applied. If the state shut down as it is, meals and rooms aren't getting that tax as well, which doesn't get passed down to us. So we're looking at a potential heavy downfall or a heavy cut for revenues because of those aspects. Within the past several years, we've been very fortunate to have our interest revenues be substantially high because of our cash flow availability. That is no longer the case as the feds have cut the interest rate to 0 to 0.25. So that's showing in our interest revenue, where previously at this time last year, we were getting, 2.5%.
Justin, is there any plans to withhold some of the revenue to the schools as we go on and then make up for it further on in the year?
So withhold the revenue wouldn't be the correct way to approach it or say it. It's more of a changing the disbursement to the school district.
Okay.
The school district, you know, the first of every month, we send them their money. With everything going on right now in cash flow, it depends on how quickly we get property taxes and things of that nature. We've worked very closely with Peter and Lisa to determine what we're able to do and whether, you know, it's breaking it out over 2 payments in July or delaying it throughout. Essentially, come June 30th, they're getting the same amount as planned.
Okay.
Justin, regarding those grants you're applying for, regarding for the expenses, if you do receive the funds, how is that reported here? Are you going to see, I'm assuming it's not an offset to the expenses. You probably have to recognize that as some other revenue, right? Those grants?
Right. So what'll end up happening is we will we'll accept them in a town council meeting. We'll add it to the budget as both a revenue and expenditure, and we'll move the expenses to that account line.
Thanks.
And Justin, you said our specific COVID-related expenses are roughly in the $70,000 range?
Those are non-personnel expenses.
Okay.
Personnel, that jumps up quite a bit because of overtime and the benefits that are attached with that we are required to pay.
And so you're saying personnel is not reimbursable under this program?
So that's where we have to look. The DOJ grant is hopefully going to reimburse us some, and that's where it kind of gets tiered down. What we don't get from one, we'll then ask for in the next. Where we don't get in that, we'll then ask for the next and go forward. That's why it's difficult right now to determine how much is going to be impacted at the end of the day without the offset of grant revenues for a reimbursement process.
Okay.
Are there parameters or a time frame that you have to apply for this, or is it pretty much open-ended as of right now?
There are parameters that go for one, which we talked about quite a bit. It's June 1st, so we applied for that this week to get us in the queue, and then there's a deadline for that grant is simply March and April, and then there's a deadline in July for May and June, and then a deadline in August for July and August, September for July and August. The others have deadlines as well. The AFG grant, the Assistance to Firefighter Supplemental, was several weeks ago, and our fire department worked to ensure that we got that in as well. Because of the lack of participants in that one, they extended the date, but that doesn't typically happen.
Thank you.
Justin, you find that when you're applying for those grants, you know, the information you receive from them to apply, is the information consistent, or are you going back, or are they changing things on you and making it complicated, or how's that working out? I know we've gone through some of the challenges too, applying for some loans, and things keep changing. So are you experiencing that?
Yes. Some of the grants are straightforward, doesn't change much. Other ones, it changes pretty constantly. And I mean, a perfect example of that is, as I said, 2 weeks ago, that 25% FEMA reimbursement, we couldn't request that back. Now they're saying, all right, you can use the CARES Act or the Gopher money to request that back. Until then, there was talk about whether the 75-25 split from FEMA would be bumped up to 100%. That, I think, has kind of gone away since the CARES Act now allows that 25% to be reimbursed through it.
Good, thank you.
Hey, Justin, I just have a
Yes.
quick question. Is there a cap for any of these grants? Like, do they cap us at a certain dollar amount?
So there is a cap for the grant total. So all these other towns are applying for it and they only have, I'm just going to throw out random numbers here. Let's say the grant only has 2 million. Depending on when you get in, how much is left, depends on how much you get. So while there may not be a deadline for it, there is a time deadline because if more people are applying for it, there's less money for you and things of that nature. The Gopher grant has the strict amount right now of $613,969.
Okay, thank you.
And just so the public is aware too, this is not this one, but every month, the month end for the fiscal year is available on the town website through the finance department page for both expenditures and revenues.
All right, do I have any further questions for Justin? All right, Justin, if you could just stay on, I'd
Yep.
appreciate that for public comment, and we will follow on the agenda. Moving on to the schools, Mr. Curro, it is your floor.
We take care of Amanda first and get dining services out of the way, Mr. Chairman. Lisa and I don't have two little kids anymore.
Very well. Go ahead, Amanda.
I'll turn on my video for you guys. How's everyone tonight? Amanda Venantia, Director of Dining Services. I was asked to come on the call. Happy to do so. And I think I'm just here for questions. So here you go. Or Mr. Caro, did you have something to present?
Why don't you just give an overview of where are we as far as the waivers and what dining service picture is probably going to look like on June 30.
Pleasure. So currently Dining Services is providing breakfast and lunch meals to to children under 18 for free. This is under the Summer Food Service Program, which we have been running through our high school location. It is a combination of curbside pickup and direct delivery. So they place an order online and one of our vans goes out and does a blind drop delivery on their doorstep. The program is being funded currently through the Summer Food Service Program due to a variety of waivers that have been issued. So basically what happened with COVID was this was something that was completely unprecedented. And they took SFSP, as the acronym goes, and issued a bunch of different waivers to make it applicable for this time. So one of the waivers that was critical in allowing Londonderry to participate within this program at the rate of free to individuals was the fact that the Summer Food Service Program is normally only for school districts who have a free and reduced percentage of 50% or more. At our percentage in Londonderry, we are too affluent to qualify for that program and normally do not offer summer food service programs to our students. So due to the waiver, we were able to enact and operate under summer food service program outside of, even though that we were below that 50% threshold. That 50% threshold has not been approved to extend beyond June 30. So we are currently serving meals and feeding kids. We are feeding over 500 students daily, and with those with the service on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And Mondays and Wednesdays, they receive 2 breakfasts and 2 lunches. On Fridays, they receive 1 breakfast and 1 lunch. That allows us to have a variety of hot options, to be able to do a variety of foods, and to serve our community in ways that they need to be served. In terms of our free and reduced percentage, it fluctuates between, I'm going to say it's approximately 13% throughout the school year. In serving 500 students, we're around the 14-15% number. So we can say with pretty good confidence that we are hitting those individuals that truly do need the program, while also hitting those individuals who perhaps have experienced some financial difficulty due to COVID. So that is, we don't think people are abusing the program. I mean, if we had 12% free and reduced lunch and we had 62% of our community coming through, that would be a huge differentiated number. So we'd go more towards that conclusion. But we're fairly happy with what we've provided the community during this time, and we've received a lot of accolades for that, and very nice handmade signs from kids as they come to pick up their food, which is adorable. In terms of financially, we are serving
Amanda.
500 students breakfast. Yes?
Can you, because there are some new board members for the budget committee. What does free reduce mean? And we get reimbursed from the feds.
Correct. So free and reduced are two different income levels. So for a student to receive free lunch for a family of 4, they would need to make below $38,000. So, which I can't even fathom. And then for the reduced rate for a family of 4, it's a little bit higher. I believe it's about $42,000. And that number changes every year from the USDA. So this is a federal program. So I operate under the USDA program, the United States Department of Agriculture, and the state of New Hampshire Department of Education, Bureau of Nutrition is the one who operates the program on behalf of the USDA. So it goes me, then the State Department, then USDA regional office in Boston, Massachusetts, who unfortunately know our name, and then the USDA in Washington, D.C. So that's pretty much the layers of the command. So back to fiscally how we are doing. Whereas we are serving 500 breakfasts and 500 lunches and being reimbursed federally for those lunches. However, we normally serve over 2,000 breakfasts and over 2,000 lunches. So there are a lot of fixed costs that are not being covered with those profit, because the profit margin is now towards the negative. So we are anticipating the food service department being to the negative in the amount of approximately $125,000 at the end of the year. According to federal guidelines in the USDA, the general fund is required to make food service whole. So you know that warrant article that you guys vote on every year that says, would you like to accept this federal funding from the USDA government? Well, that's the other hand of this. Yes, they give us money to run our program, but we're also required to fund it in times of negative deficits. So this is the other hand of that. And unless Mr. Caro has anything else that he'd like me to disclose or expound upon, I will take questions.
Yeah, Amanda, can you explain that when we say it's free, it means we are receiving from the federal government the price per meal that is usually allotted to the free program. So parents are not paying anything. We are then telling the feds what the numbers are and getting reimbursed.
Exactly. So at a free rate, for every free lunch, we are reimbursed $3.28 for a meal. So, and then for breakfast, it's $1.98, I believe, if memory serves, that we're we're recouping. However, I can say that a handled paper bag is 30 cents. I can tell you that paper individual bags were not, have never before been seen as an expense for our program. And whereas in the cafeteria line, we operate a program called Offer versus Serve, which means we offer students a variety of vegetables, we offer students a variety of fruits, and they're only required to take 3 components as a part of the federal program. Within remote learning, we're mandated to put all portions of the lunch in a bag. So there are lots and lots of costs being affected by putting things in bags and sending them out. So we have the additional food costs there. Also, whereas in the schools, we would put items, we would put carrots on the line with a scoop and have them put that onto their plate. We are now spending a lot of time putting those fruits and vegetables, which we're mandated to include in our lunches, in bags. So for example, to bag 500 portions of a vegetable, it takes 3 labor hours, as opposed to dumping it in a pan and placing a spoon. So there are a lot of expenses. This program is more expensive on both counts.
I would say on the fiscal point of it, we at the end of last year, till June 30, 2019, the dining program had about an $80,000 surplus, and that we will burn through that 80,000 unfortunately this year, and actually cut a check for an additional net operating of 125. That's where Amanda's 125 comes from. So all in all, dining's going to lose somewhere about 160, 170,000. Questions on dining services, Mr. Chairman?
I have a
Go
question.
ahead, Christine.
Hey, Amanda, with this current situation, normally it probably doesn't go beyond June. Do you see them extending it into the summer?
Christine, do you have a crystal ball? We'll be discussing that on the June 2nd school board meeting. But currently, there were 5 waivers posted by the state of New Hampshire to the USDA, and one of those waivers did include the inclusion or the extension of the waiver for the under 50% school districts, which Londonderry is, to be included. 3 of those waivers has passed. The other 2 have not. So it's not that they've said no, they've just haven't addressed it. So we can take their silence right now as a no. And so we'll be presenting that to the school board.
Okay.
Our recommendation would probably say we could extend this program really no further than June 30th. We go into the summer, cost is not an issue. It's going to be tough to get staff and staff this properly.
Amanda, what are some examples of fixed expenses that you had mentioned earlier in your brief?
Fixed expenses are everything from equipment, even the labor piece, because we are still paying a majority of our staff. So, I mean, if they're working, then they're working. Some other pieces are,
equipment.
There's an increased supplies. I'm sorry, I can hear the head of accounting talking because she is, Lisa, what'd you say?
No, you pretty much hit it.
Mostly equipment, and then your labor and benefits are your big numbers.
Labor and benefits for sure. I think that's about it. But our supplies line is definitely increased.
Don't forget, you bought food anticipating, I'll say the phrase, a normal year end, to which it didn't happen. So you've got an abundant amount of food that normally you'd be running out in about 2 weeks.
Yeah. So typically in June,
inventory.
Right. So typically in June, we run out of, we have a very big gain in our income statement in June because we're utilizing our products very efficiently, going back and taking a look and, kind of piecemealing things together. But just to give you an example, in the summer, we usually turn off 4 fridges and freezers. And this year, we will be turning off 0 because they're full of food. And there are some items that just do not translate to remote feeding. And therefore are cost prohibitive to going to remote feeding because the packaging is astronomically expensive. And even then, sometimes is you can't get it. So I have to buy paper bags 2 weeks before I need them, for example. It's been a very unique situation. So
If you look at the normal income statement curve for food service, you'll see that somewhere around December, January, the program is in the deficit. I'm going to say 120,000. And then as you get into February, March, it starts to break even. April, May, and June, it turns a positive because she's now using inventory that she has bought during the year. And then when we get towards the end of the year, as she said, it's pretty much down to 1 freezer or 1 refrigerator. And so usually, like you said, June and May are like big profit, net profit months. April's a little bit, March you break even. And then, so the time that normally food service would start to turn a profit is when everything shut down.
Amanda, are you finding that any volunteers helping out? Is that possible, or is that an option?
Steve, that's a great question. It is an option. However, we have been told by the state, I'm so sorry. We were being told by the state to employ our staff as much as we can, and therefore we have, and all staff that has been willing to work. And what I mean by willing to work is dining service is essential. So we don't have the opportunity to work remotely. We have to come into work. It's been very difficult, because we have to come in and work with each other as well as the public. So some of our staff are in a population that need to stay home. But everyone that is willing to work, we have continued to employ.
But also, can you keep your kids under control?
We are all
But
deeply
also-
sympathetic. I think many of us understand.
Yeah, well, Lisa and I are.
Absolutely.
But
We
to
need a
the
nap.
point of volunteers, there is a mandatory training period or program that people have to go through in order to be with dining services.
Right.
So it isn't like Lisa and I, if we were to like help out, we would have to go through this mandatory program in order to be trained on the proper use of food at a public dining center. So it isn't just pulling people off the street. It's not that easy.
No, everyone is trained and goes through a sanitation training, as well as like to commend the school district and specifically our maintenance department and Chuck Zappala and his team, because this was not a reactive situation. This was something we saw at the very beginning of March. I think it was the second week in March that we had training materials out to that department, and we had people trained and ready to go. So we had a B list of individuals. I'd also like to say thank you to the district office, because almost everyone in the district office is trained to help in food service in a pinch. That's just another incredible example of not only our forethought, but their willingness to help where needed. So thank you to everyone up there.
Hey, Amanda, I've got a question. You've got a certain amount of excess food that you said that you can't use because it's not amenable to the type of food service you're offering now, which I guess means that you've got some excess food, or you essentially pre-bought some food, assuming school gets back in September. Is that accurate?
Yes, Paul. However, inventory is included in our financial statement. So that is put, Lisa, help me. That's putting in as a credit. How, I don't know. I give it all to Lisa and she makes the
It's a
magic.
year-end, it's a year-end adjustment from the auditors
To the balance sheet, yeah.
based on what your inventory value was the previous year.
I got you.
So that will be accounted in the final number that is presented that the general fund needs to make us whole.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other
You're having to
questions for
deliver food
Amanda?
as well? I was just going to ask you, you're having to deliver food as well? So there's obviously a new cost there associated with that service, right?
And that is something that we started the Wednesday after we finished. I think we were the first school in the country to utilize the technology in this way, and we were actually the subject of multiple case studies across the country as well as multiple articles because of our forethought and our ability to adapt quickly and respond. We had a number of individuals who are amongst the had to stay home and were not comfortable coming to, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, one of my earbuds just died. Sorry. So we're not comfortable coming in. So for the curbside, it was to serve our community who did not have transportation, as well as those who were not comfortable leaving their homes. And we have also a lot of people within the healthcare industry and first responders who have said, thank you very much for that. We also asked our community members not to utilize the delivery option if they don't need it. So that's really great. But we deliver to about 100 homes every delivery for people that really do need that access.
I would say before we let her go, if anybody's around 11:30 on the day on Monday and Wednesdays, take a peek at the front of the school, or maybe even better, go in around 10 o'clock and see what 500 bags of lunch look like.
Well, not even 500. It's over 2,000 because we're doing a breakfast. We're doing 2 breakfasts and 2 lunches on Mondays and Wednesdays. So we have over 2,000 bags. Like, so for example, tomorrow's Friday. So we already have 1,000 bags that are already prepped and ready to go that just need to be filled with the perishable items. But it's been a very interesting time. But we have been very fiscally responsible in terms of utilizing all of our DoD money. The Department of Defense actually does allot us some commodity funds, and we have transferred all of our commodity funds to purchase fresh fruits and vegetables, specifically for the remote learning, as well as access. And actually, we've driven to Concord to pick up food from the surplus commodities department to capitalize on that which is free and or discounted. So I really believe that we have tried to remain fiscally responsible throughout.
And you said Monday and Wednesdays, you do this at one time?
Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, 11 a.m. to 12 o'clock. There is the pickup for families. But we're in there very, very early, getting ready. Most of the staff comes in at 8, some at 7, to get things ready and going. We include at least one hot item each day. Like, for example, tomorrow is a hot breakfast item. So the hot breakfast item is a sausage, egg, and cheese pancake, unless I'm thinking about next Friday. Sorry, I always work on next week's menu because I'm ordering. So that is either this Friday or next Friday, but we always have at least one hot item that goes in. And so we've told our parents to basically think of this as takeout. However you would heat or reheat items from a restaurant is how we expect you to treat the items that you receive from us.
And you give them breakfast and lunch at the same pickup time, right? They don't have to come back at lunchtime for the other meal?
Correct. They come once for those 4 meals on Monday, once for the 4 meals on Wednesday, and once for the 2 meals on Friday. Minimizing contact, as well as being efficient.
Right, yeah. Those are big bags.
Yeah.
Sounds like a great program. Thank you.
Yep.
My pleasure. Well, I heard electric toothbrushes going, so that's a good sound.
Mr. Chairman, any more for
Great.
her?
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Amanda, for taking care of the community, keeping us fed, children fed, and have a wonderful night.
My pleasure, folks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Curro.
Yes, school district is on a little bit different curve than the town. The town is facing, the brunt now with police and fire. We've basically been shut down for like the middle of March to the end of the year. So we're in a far different financial picture than the town is. Lisa and I did a quick third quarter report, and then last board meeting I called it 3.5. And at 3.5, we stuck with our estimate, and still a rough estimate, of about $1.1 million surplus at the end of the year. Roughly about 850 was on the expense side, and about 250 was excess revenues or revenues over the target that we used when we took the property tax. Since then, we've had a couple curveballs thrown at us, and we're sure which one. We're sure of one of them. We're not sure of the other one. You might have heard that the power at the high school is out. One of the original main lines shorted, I think, about a week ago. And we just got the estimate that it will be close to $100,000 to repair that line. The contractor for Eversource will be on scene today. Actually, I think they started today. And it will take them about a week to fix this. So when we did the 3.5 projection, we obviously didn't expect that little surprise to hit us. And then we have this unexpected issue of the trust fund and what's going to happen with the trust fund in the public hearing June 16th. And I don't know which way that's going to go. So assuming the trust fund goes the way it has the past 20 years, take into account that $100,000 for the power, we're still looking at a surplus. I'm still going to say $1 million, maybe $1.05 million. Our biggest picture, before I take questions on June 30 or this fiscal year, our biggest unknown is July on. How much remedial services that were not budgeted will need to be required. We're still working that out for the summer. How much remedial services when school opens, however school opens, is still undetermined. And in fact, we're still not even sure how school is going to even open next year. If I had a guess, and this is a wild guess, there'll be some kind of a hybrid. Some may be in remote still, and some students may be in the buildings. As we know, guidance is changing like every 2 weeks. We're going to be short, I think, of a few things. Desks or chairs are going to have to probably be 6 feet apart. So we did a quick one. Chuck went down with his staff and did a quick one. If you look at an elementary setup with the desks, and the desks are in the grades 3, 4, and 5, the maximum you can put in is 15 desks. So, not being funny, if you've got a class size of 20 that's being scheduled for Matthew Thornton grade 3 or whatever, what are we doing with the other 5? So we'll have to see how that pans out. How many parents are going to keep their kids home by their own decision? That's a question that's gonna come up. And then what other equipment or supplies are we gonna need to have school? Masks, disinfecting stations. I know Chuck is looking into touchless cleaning stations, for lack of a better word. Instead of having the bottle, 1,000 bottles around the buildings, have a variety of these 50-gallon drums of disinfectant stations that don't need, that are touchless, and use those. Obviously, those weren't in the budget. So our biggest issue next is really July 1 through the beginning of school. That's our biggest thing. We're kind of certain. I guess we get another surprise that, like I said, the year-end surplus should be $1 million, give or take, 50,000 either way. I think we talked about 2 or 3 of the big lines that are really producing that. We talked about it earlier, but I'll say it again. Transportation. When we went into remote, the first thing you heard was that May 4th was like the first date that the governor kind of gave us. And so given the environment and given the requests of the feds and the state, we kept the drivers, we kept paying the drivers through the STA contract on the books. So when we paid the second half of March in the month of April, we paid the full contract for the bus minus we got a fuel credit. Obviously, they weren't running. When we got to like the end of April, as you know, the order came from the governor that we were going to stay in remote from then on. STA then furloughed the drivers. So basically the month of May and half of June, June 10th, so we'll just say half of June for discussion, we are getting a credit for the labor costs associated with transportation and the fuel costs. The other big one was substitutes. Obviously, if the teachers are remote, the amount of substitutes that were needed or would have been needed for March, April, May pretty much disappeared. And then the utilities for the buildings, obviously there was a credit. Obviously we didn't use as much lights if every classroom was being used. Unfortunately, we didn't get the maximum amount of heat cost because it was rather cold spring. And we did have people in the building, and I'll get to that in a minute. So we didn't turn the boilers off entirely. There were still people in the building, but there was the savings to that. The 2 lines or 2 areas that we're going over, we just talked about dining services. The other one that went over a little bit was buildings and grounds. Given the fact that once we knew for sure that students were not coming back, we really ramped up a lot of our maintenance projects that we normally would have done in the summer because there are a lot of things we can't do when students are in the building. So we took advantage of the time. The asbestos project, even though it comes out of the trust fund or a special article, we started the asbestos early, and we did a lot of maintenance that we would have maybe have done in July. We started them in May and June to spread them out and so we wouldn't have to bump into each other like we do sometimes in the short window that we have in July and August. Most of that was labor, wasn't a whole lot of supplies, but still we just accelerated the maintenance plan and took advantage of the unanticipated downtime. So, and then along with the substitutes, there were a fair amount of stipends that might have been paid, in the spring and in the course of the year that didn't get paid, obviously, because we're in remote. So those are where the big lines where the budget will come about 800,000 under. And then I don't know what, and then like I said, we'll see what the final number is for this electrical issue at the high school. So I can talk about June 30, up to June 30 first before we get to next year.
Sure, I have a question if you don't mind. There must be grants that we've discussed previously related to COVID. Have you guys applied for those yet? Do you have a list of grants and the deadlines for those?
The big one is, I'm sorry, we have an echo. The big one is the CARES grant. And that's based on our Title I number. Right now, where it keeps fluctuating. Right now, it's about 180,000. And we would probably use a good chunk of that in the summer, and then probably a lot of it as we open up school in August for, as I mentioned, remedial programs for students that need to catch up that didn't do well in the remote learning environment.
Has the
Peter,
state mentioned?
sorry, Jen.
Oh, sorry. Has the state mentioned any sort of grant or other funds available for additional cleaning supplies and hand sanitizer and potentially masks for students
CARES,
to go back?
Yes. We can use the CARES money, or as I mentioned, I don't know what they're going to do with this, but they asked us for like a survey of what we thought potentially COVID was going to cost us, and we gave them a list of equipment that we think may need to be replaced, overtime that Chuck had, and so that was passed in, I think, the second week, and we were in remote. We haven't heard back what the state's going to do with that yet.
Peter, go ahead, Kirsten.
Oh, I was just going to say, Peter, on the last school board meeting, you talked a little bit about what happens to that $1 million plus or minus overage. Could you go into that very briefly here for the benefit of the people who might not know what happens to that overage?
So at June 30 of 2019, the school district had about $900,000 in what's called, what do we call it now? Undesignated fund balance, which means there's no commitment to that to be used. It's surplus. By state law, we can retain up to 2.5% of our net assessment. So if a number is, it's about $1.5 million, plus or minus. So now we come around to June 30, and we have 900, and we had $1 million. Now we're at $1.9 million. So unless the state allows us to retain additional amount of money because of COVID, which we meaning the ASBO group, are putting together a position paper. Immediately then, 400 of the $400,000 would have to go as revenue to offset the December 2020 tax rate. So we could then retain $1.5 million, and then the question is, what do you want to do with the other, say, $600,000 of the $1 million that we have on June 30. And Lisa and I, as we do, debate, discuss, and argue with each other. And in about a couple of weeks, we'll have a position, probably at the July board meeting, because I think we want to get through first close, so we can have a comfortable number of what that surplus will be, and provide a few options to the school board of what they want to do. And we say that really for a couple of reasons. As I mentioned, we really don't know what we're going to need because of COVID next year. And if there was every year that we probably would have loved not to have a default budget, next year probably would have been the year. But it is what it is. So if we have $1.5 million, let's say, that allows us to then tap into surplus or revenue if we need to. And I would write it so it would be strictly for a COVID situation. Or we can just give it all back and we just retain 900,000. The problem is, and this has happened a few times in Londonderry, and it's happened everywhere. If you return $1 million all in 1 year, it's great. The tax rate obviously drops. What's going to happen for 2 years is people's escrows are going to bounce. And when I was the finance director for the town, we did this. And you actually thought you were doing a good thing until everybody came back and they were all screwed up with their escrows for 2 years. And they basically said to us, don't ever do that again to us, believe it or not. So we want to get through at least first close, see what the number is. And then Lisa and I, as we do, will throw a bunch of scenarios together and consequences. And then, like I said, probably have a position or at least a recommendation to the school board. I think it's July, I think it's 16, of what we would like to do. And obviously they'll vote on it. Does that help you? That confusion more.
No, that was what I was looking for you to repeat here. So thank you.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
Kirsten asked my question.
Oh, wow.
Hey, Peter, do you have any sense, has the state yet given you any guidance as to what may be in front of you in terms of class size and requirements for the building itself post, during this COVID period, assuming school does take place again here in September? Or when do we expect that information if they don't have it yet?
Yeah, I think current guidance, right now would be they want the desk or chairs 6 feet apart. Okay. Right now, I think they want each student temp check before they enter the building. Easier said than done. For those who've been around a while, if you remember, we had a bunch of bomb threats. I'm going to say 2004, and I could be corrected, where at one point we actually had officers at the front door of the high school and kind of do a quick wand check as each kid came in. The problem, though, is with that, you can't have the students all bunched up in a line, so to speak, waiting to get wand checked. They're gonna have to be somehow socially distanced 6 feet apart when they're waiting to get in. That's the big issue. Masks right now are on the docket. They're not sure if they're going to require masks for employees, for students, or both. And then, I hate to say this, one of the big question marks is transportation. Right now, I'm lucky that I have an in, so to speak, at CDC. And he is telling me that we don't be surprised if you cannot run your buses at least the first 2 months of school. If you follow it, how are you going to run buses if you got to keep everybody 6 feet apart? You're probably going to have one student per bench. So if we do one student per bench, the STA's got to figure out a way to get me a boatload of buses, forget about how to pay for it. And of course, every school district is in the same situation. Again, scenarios, options, kicking it around. State law doesn't require transportation for high school. But could do that. Right now, those are the big issues that are still in the air as far as what a class size is going to look like. And then you've got the situation, in the hallways. Elementary schools are easy, right? They don't go anywhere. Middle and high school kids, the bell rings. If you've ever been in the high school and the bell rings, think your life, your life's threatened with the stampede of kids. Can't have that. You got to have them 6 feet apart. So those are all the balls that are still in the air as to how we're going to figure out what school may look like next year. Obviously, that June school board meeting is probably the bullseye. At the moment, that's the one where I believe the superintendent and Dan are pretty much going to lay out what the guidelines are as far as the state or the feds or CDC, and then what our plans are. And then that August meeting will be the, go and no go and whatever recommendations are laid out. But those are some of the big things that is on the docket.
Thank you. Daunting for sure.
Challenging.
So this is kind of a weird question, but like, is there anything we
We're in
can do?
unprecedented times, Kristen, so anything is good.
I miss precedented times. I really am holding out for those again. Certain circumstances. Is there anything we can do to help? Like, what do we ask these, we sit here and ask these questions of you guys. Is there anything that we can do? I mean, I don't think the answer is yes, but is there?
I never want to say no, and I mean that. But I think it's a matter of, we have a task force up here. We're meeting twice a week. And it's really a matter of pulling down the guidelines, listening to the webinars of either the CDC or whatever, interpreting the guidelines, and then figuring out what to do. I mean, luckily, like every school district, there's the education side. So Scott and Dan figure out, and Kim, Director of Special Ed, figure out how they're going to educate kids, not being funny. And Lisa and I and Chuck and Brandon figure out how we're going to support them. And we get, like I said, we get together twice a week for about an hour and a half. And sometimes they're smooth, and sometimes, we raise our hand, or somebody raises their hand and says, can't do that. There's no way, I can't support you on that one. There's no way I can do that safely without being safe. So they get, we throw things around, and sometimes we leave with more questions than answers. But as we get into, I think, as we close this year, and we get into like middle of June, as the guidelines become clear, that's going to dictate what we can do, Lisa and I, and then what education's going to do. And then once we find out what we can do and they can do, Lisa and I will start putting dollars on that. And that's why I say it's that surplus at the end of June 30 could be the saving grace of this, where depending on what education needs or wants to do, could be the fact that we could tip in the surplus and not devastate as many programs that we might have if we didn't have any surplus in the books.
Hey, Peter, when you mentioned the hybrid scenarios, are you consulting like some of the colleges that specialize in the online education just to get some feedback on what a hybrid scenario would look like to them?
That and the superintendent belongs to a group that meet, now they're meeting twice a week, called the South Central Superintendents. I think you got Bedford, Goffstown, Merrimack, Salem, Derry, Hudson, Litchfield, Hollis Brookline, that group. So they're figuring out, and they're getting, obviously the commissioner is involved and so forth. So they're looking at what can be happened, what can be done. I think Dan Black has mentioned that we've learned some valuable lessons on remote education, beginning in March to now. The old, had we known, we would have done it a little different in March, had we known this or that. So We'll be ready if there is a hybrid and there is a group that's staying remote. We've learned some lessons, and those lessons will be learned, will be enacted, in August. The problem, the difference is, as you know, and I don't mean to make this simple. College, your kids are 18, 19, 20, 21. I want my living room has been commandeered with Mrs. Currow having kids count fish on her Zoom thing. So it is easier, as you can guess, for the high school to be remote.
Mhm.
A little more complicated for the middle, a lot more complicated elementary and kindergarten. And then special ed,
Yep.
it's a whole different animal all to itself.
I'll comment on the special ed. Our neighbor across the street, she's a special ed teacher in Merrimack, and you see her on the front porch, and it's difficult to get some of the kids engaged. But she said that the support, is the biggest thing from the community and from the district that has been very helpful for her. So,
And again, the same thing. It depends on the situation that the student is in. If it, some need a little help, and then when you got the ones that are really on the other scale, it's almost impossible to do anything remotely.
what about are they doing any of the out of district? I know there's some out of district services that we utilize. Is that continued for us at all during this time?
I believe they are probably not, 100%. Let's be fair, but I believe the ones that are out of district, they are providing some service to those that were there. I could probably reach out to Kim and have an answer for you.
On the
I
revenue
appreciate
side,
that.
Peter, what's the status of our revenue from the other districts, Hooksett specifically?
We're fine.
Right on time.
Yeah. All our revenues are in this year, so to speak.
What's it still paying?
Hooksett is fine. Again, let me give you I know you mentioned, with Justin, about cash flow. Let me give you the RSA, and then I'll tell you that Lisa and I, we actually reached out to Kevin and Justin and said, if you've got cash flow, we can help you. But I think you need to know there is an RSA out there that does say that the town must, not shall, can, should, the town must turn over that cash, which is necessary to schools, which are necessary to sustain normal operations. Not many people know that. So there is an RSA that requires that. So if we needed, I'm just making it up, $5 million in July, by law, the town is obligated to turn $5 million over to us, whether they have it or not. As I said, believe it or not, the town and school work together more than most towns and schools that I know in the state. So we've
Do
already
you have that
told
RSA, Peter?
in front of me. No, I'll find
Would you
it.
be willing to email us?
You don't trust me?
Not saying I don't. I just want to see the RSA so I can read it myself.
Okay, I'll find it.
Thank you.
But what I was saying is, Lisa and I, actually reached out to them and said, if you need cash flow help, give us a shout. Because we know, they're nervous about incoming. Actually, if you remember, the governor was actually considering delaying the requirement, the due date of taxes and pushing it out 60 days. That would have put them in a huge cash flow bind. The fact that he didn't, I think what he did was extended the penalty date is much helpful to them, because by not doing that, they'll get the escrow money from the banks on time, which is a huge chunk of money that will help their cash flow.
Now, Peter, I'm sure you guys are probably already thinking about this, but obviously organized sports would not be happening. So you're probably considering using the gym as a way of setting up classrooms to keep the 6 feet distance, right?
Maybe. We're gonna wait to see what the guidelines are and what NHIA would allow. You gotta be careful of the gym. That gym floor isn't really designed for the amount of foot traffic that we put on it, but I'm sure we can figure out the gym and or the calves.
Okay.
When I say calves, we got the middle school calf, Matthew Thornton calf.
We also you guys also put down that matting on for voting and stuff like that too. You don't think that would
Yeah.
sustain the?
It wasn't designed. The gym floor wasn't designed to do that. If you look to the left of the gym, there's a little parking lot. The original plan, that was supposed to be a building or part of the building with a multi-purpose floor, and that's where the voting and everything else was supposed to be. If you go to the Winnicott gym, that's our gym. So July 1, similar to the town, we've already submitted our papers for building aid and adequacy, all that state revenue. We're waiting to see if any or all of those are going to be knocked down or not. We haven't heard anything yet. Obviously, the state is probably going to have to close or have they close their books in June 30 because their audit's much longer than ours. But they're going to have to probably do some digging as to allocation of shared revenues. When I say shared revenues, when they give the locals, towns, and schools money, they're gonna have to figure out how much money they can probably afford to shift down to the locals, whether it's town or schools. We haven't heard anything yet. I'm expecting a reduction on building aid and maybe adequacy. I couldn't even tell you what number yet.
Peter, what's the point of no return for establishing a plan for next year? Like what's the last date or rough last date that you can come up where you have to finalize what you're going to do in the fall to give you all enough time to come up with an operational plan and a physical plan to adjust? When do you think that point is?
That we will know, like I said, we will have our plans, our recommendation ready for that July meeting. That July meeting is going to be the meeting. And we will then lay out, based on the guidelines, so forth and so on, what we think school should look like in September. And then something of that size, that magnitude, it would be irresponsible for us to have the board bless that in one meeting. So I think the next meeting is like August 2nd. So that August 2nd meeting, the board would, again, everything can change, but you're asking me today, August 2nd, we would bring up the recommendation that was submitted in July, and the board would have to either bless something. Because parents need to know, obviously, what's happening. They need to make plans. We need to make plans, on our own side. Parents need to make plans of what they're going to do. We can't tell them week before, oh, by the way, the high school is staying remote. Yeah, it's not going to work. So they need time to make, adjust their calendars, as we need time to make sure that we've got our buildings ready, open, with the PPEs and whatever else we need to open the doors safely. That help you?
Thank you. Yeah, there's just been a lot of questions about when that time frame is, and I was curious from a financial and operational standpoint.
Right. I mean, the problem is you can't make it too early because the guidelines, are changing. We're in phase 1 now, right? I believe we're gonna go to phase 2 around June 15th. Okay? How long does phase 2 last? I don't know. And then, obviously, all it's gonna take is the city of Boston to become a hotspot again, right? And every plan you had on the wall, tear it down and start over again. So you almost have to wait until that mid-July, finalize what you got based on the guidelines, and then stamp it that first week, that first meeting in August, and go with it.
Do we have any
That's it.
other questions for Mr. Curro? All right.
We good?
All right. Do you have any other final thoughts, Peter?
No, I hate to say, stay tuned to, especially those of you that have kids, in the system. I got to tell you, we watch webinars and we come up with an idea, and the next webinar, you just throw those ideas out because all the guidelines have now changed. So I know Scott and Dan are ramping up their communications plan to kind of roll things out and throw things out a little at a time. But as I mentioned, that July 15th and that August, I think it's 2nd, are going to be the real critical what school is going to look like in September.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. And just as with Mr. Campo, if you could just stay on for our public comment section at the end, we'll
sure.
move through liaison reports. So
Are we getting overtime for this?
Peter, you can have a share of our dollar for this.
yes.
If the chairman needs a buck or two he lost his razor.
We're in a budget freeze, so no, he can't.
All right. So moving on, thank you very much, Ms. Curro. Appreciate your time. Liaison reports. We'll start with Public Works. Steve.
No, no updates.
All right. Thank you. Police Department, Paul. You're muted. Still
Hang on.
muted.
Yeah.
You're,
Can you hear me now?
yes.
All right, cool. Thank you. Sorry. How do you normally do these, Chad? Do you, because I took notes of our discussion, but there's no major, I think, what am I looking for? Nothing that very significant came out of that I can report. He feels that, they've obviously got their challenges like every other department does. And he mentioned, as certain Scott Laliber did as well, that everything's a bit of a moving target now. They just don't know what's upcoming, and everything's very fluid. But again, I don't have anything significant to report, I think, at this point, so we can move on.
All right. Thank you. Fire Department, Mr. Kipp.
Yes, I met with Chief O'Brien on May 20th. I visited him at the fire station and went through their screening protocol, which I was interested to do. The chief is projecting approximately being 2% over budget for this year ending June 30th, due primarily to overtime and medical supplies from the COVID-19 pandemic. And as Justin will confirm, and Justin, correct me if I'm wrong, he mentioned some of the grants that specifically apply to the fire department that they're aggressively seeking. The AFG, the Assistance to Firefighters Grant, they're looking for $36,000 for personal protective equipment related to COVID-19. New Hampshire DOJ, $300,000 for the police and fire department to share. And again, these are applications, not received. And then they're waiting to hear on a $675,000 grant to replace their air packs. And the chief is quite confident they would receive that money, unrelated to COVID-19. He did tell me that when and if FEMA reimburses for COVID-19 related extras, which I put in air quotes, which are not clearly defined yet, that'll be a town-wide grant, not department specific. One area of concern for the chief is vehicle maintenance. It's an area of focus. Their budget for vehicle maintenance is $85,000 annually. And it's been especially challenging this year because of the additional time and miles they're putting on their apparatus due to COVID-19. So some maintenance may have to be deferred, but the fire department puts a huge priority on making sure their apparatus and ambulances are in high quality operating condition. And then the chief just wanted me to reassure all of us on the committee that he's always willing and always available to communicate with us should we have any questions.
All right, thank you. CIP, Christine or Steve, do you have any comments or reports from the CIP?
Yeah, the first meeting is going to be held June 15th at 6 o'clock. And that's when they'll have their first meeting, and the following meetings will be decided at that meeting.
All right, and I did email out to the committee the CIP letter to departments as well as the worksheet and submission form. So everyone should have that in their inbox.
Yep, I saw those.
All right, town council. I do not have anything to report from them. I know we do have a counselor on the call. Schools, we will, or Christine, do you have anything for the town?
No, because I think the questions that popped up at the last meeting were more or less answered tonight with the school presentation.
Right. Town presentation.
Both.
There we go. Cheerson, do you have any report from the school board?
Peter covered much better than I would have everything that happened at the last meeting for the most part. The one change that was not mentioned already tonight is that the school board did decide moving forward to hold public hearings on expenditures coming from the trust funds and the capital reserve funds. So the first time you're going to see that happening is, and Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, did you get the notice in time for this June 2nd meeting, or is the first one going to be June 16th?
Oh, June 16th.
It's June 16th. So going forward, they're going to hold public hearings for those expenditures, much like the town council does. And the only other thing that has any minor budget relevance is they said they'll make a decision by June 13th on fall sports, which would have some budgetary impact because obviously then that money wouldn't be expended. But I'm imagining that decision, like all others, will be rolled into the larger planning for the fall. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Jen, I know we just had a good brief from the finance department. Do you have any reports regarding your billet?
I don't. I met with Peter and Lisa on May 7th via phone call. And at like a couple of weeks after that, they provided the food service income statement that I believe I shared with you, Chad. And did you share that with everybody else?
I did not. I will attach that to the this week or tonight's minutes.
So this was for July through March 31st, and at the very it goes through like all the income and expenses, and you guys can see that in detail. But the net loss year to date as of March 31st was just close to 26,000. So they're expecting 170 or 125. That's it.
All right, thank you. And Paul, liaison report for the superintendent.
Yeah, I met with Scott about a week and a half ago via phone as well. Peter covered, for the most part, everything Scott really went over. And he just stressed again how fluid this whole situation is. They just have so many unknowns. It's really hard to gauge it. But he did mention their weekly meetings or bi-weekly meetings I think they're having with other school districts. Everybody trying to come up with a plan that's going to be workable. Some of the challenges they have around special ed, what that looks like, because there's challenges that special ed presents on a regular basis, but now in a COVID environment and remote learning, it's extremely challenging. So what that's going to look like going forward is going to be interesting, and he's not quite sure what that how that plays out. Also, retention of teachers, things like that, staffing. What the staffing is going to look like. Are they going to need more teachers, fewer teachers? Bus drivers, as Peter laid out, more or less, it really is going to be very dependent on whether there's what the school year looks like come September. So again, at this point, just things are very fluid and they're trying to work through it. But they have, seen obviously some savings from workshops with teachers, for one, being one of them. Building maintenance costs have come down, although as Peter indicated, they're trying to spend money now because they've got empty schools to work with and trying to get some work done that would normally be done during the summertime. But again, I think Peter covered most of what I had pretty well.
All right, thank you. And I will now open up for public comments. Again, I see a couple of residents that have logged in. I will go ahead and unmute. Deb, do you, if I can. Why is this not working? Just give me a second. All right, Deb, you can go ahead and unmute yourself if you have any public comment.
Well, I was just listening to what you were all saying. I am wondering when the budget committee will be kind of having it more public and going through each line of each budget, publicly, for residents to ask questions and maybe see where we can save some money. Maybe looking at taking 2% across the board from everybody, school, town, library, asking them all to step up and reduce their budgets by that amount. Maybe it's 3%, I don't know. But I think that the taxpayers are in a very tight spot, having to pay for the raises that the unions were getting, that are coming on the back of people who may not be working and may be forcing to have a decision: do you pay your taxes or do you put food on your table? So I'm very concerned about the residents in this town right now, and what the future, or the uncertainty of the future, is going to bring for us. So as a resident, I'm not speaking as a counselor, I'm speaking as a resident. I'm really, really, really concerned that we're going to be able to acquire the money we need to run this town. And I think that we need to be proactive and have a plan, and hopefully we'll be hoping for, hope for the best in that regard. So I guess I want to entertain that thought and get a concise feel for what the budget committee thinks about doing something like that, cutting the budget 2 to 3% across the board, or asking the departments to do that, going through line items and looking at, having the union heads speak to the unions and talk about maybe holding off those raises for a year, just to make it a little easier for the taxpayer. So I'm just looking for your thought.
Thank you. We will get back to you on that in regards to the 2% cut and the line items. I know that we do have public comment at the beginning and end of every one of our meetings, and we are more than would love to have the community's involvement in regards to specific items. I know you mentioned the 2%, and thank you. And does any other people have any comments?
Because nobody feels any which way at all about anything that I said.
Deb, I think you're spot on. There's definitely going to be some concerns here. Obviously, expenses are going up everywhere. You're seeing it in stores. You buy something, grocery stores, prices are up. Prices are up going everywhere. So it's you go buy something, it's a 2% increase on it for. I was just at Ocean State Job Lot, and they had a 2% increase for their employees. So it's happening everywhere. This is definitely going to be a challenge for us. This budget.
Okay. Steve, would you be interested in even thinking about having some sort of conversation with the union negotiators to ask them to maybe hold back on raises for this year? Or do you think that's beyond what we can ask for as a budget committee? And do I have to ask for that as a town council?
Yeah, Deb, I think that actually has to come from the counselors and from the specific boards and who's designated on the boards, the school board and the town council. A lot of that is governed by pretty strict privacy laws, and we as a budget committee, none of us are actually legally empowered to enter into those conversations. So that is something that if you wanted to do, would have to go through town council and the school board and their respective attorneys to open up that conversation. Statutorily, we don't have the right to do that. I do know that. Like by law, we can't. That said, I think it's prudent to ask the departments to start considering that in light of potential revenue shortfalls, unseen expenditures, to ask for ideas of where they think they can cut. I'm loath to put a hard and fast percentage number on it, largely because, you know, there's a certain amount until we figure out exactly what is a fixed cost and what is a existing payroll and benefits cost. Those are somewhat immutable at this point. And so I'd be interested to hear where the specific departments think they could best make their cuts first and then proceed from there. I'm sure there's places where other people could go in and look and see. I'd be loath to do a hard and fast number like 2 or 3% right now, because 2 or 3% from one area might work. 2 or 3% could, you know, considering, for example, if the school has to go retrofit for 6-foot distancing, then that becomes an overall 2% cut could completely prohibit them from doing that.
Right.
So I'd like to see areas. Yeah, I'd like to see areas where people would be able to cut, but I'm, like I said, hesitant to do a hard and fast number on it at this point without more research.
Well, my thought is if we get the dialogue going now, this allows them a lot longer period of time to really go over where monies are and to say, well, if we might not be able to cut the 2%, but we may not have to ask for an extra 2% because we're going to take it from here to put it here in that same budget. Do you know what I'm trying to say? I just want to give them some time so that they're not crunching behind numbers.
Deb, this is Jonathan. We haven't discussed this as the budget committee yet, but as I'm sure everybody knows, as the budget committee, at the very end of the budget, the lengthy budget process, we're asked to approve the town council's budget and the school board's budget. So I would recommend to our committee, to the budget committee, that we communicate with the town council and the school board well in advance of the budget, the start of the budget process, to share some of these thoughts that we've heard from you, from the public, some of our own thoughts, so that the town council and the school board can communicate with their departments on budget targets for the upcoming year, which again, as Steve said, is going to be very challenging.
I agree. Like I said, to me, it's just a timing thing. I don't want it all to be bogged down at the end. And just hopefully we have a plan, and maybe we don't need to use it all, but it's good to have the plan.
I would agree that getting forecasts into the budget a little bit earlier. Normally our first look at the budget is when the budget book comes out in November, or for the town, and then when we get the school budget near the end of November normally for the schools. Getting some sort of forecasting earlier would actually help not only us understand the direction that it's going, let us delve into a little bit more, because getting all that information at the tail end, whereas everybody else has been immersed in it for a while before that, can have a catch-up curve. So perhaps there might be some way to get some of that information out earlier, which would let us take a closer look and let us really dig into it more.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, I would like to, any other comments from the committee? All right, I would like to, is there a motion on the floor to adjourn?
So moved, Mr. Chairman, that we adjourn the May 2020 Budget Committee meeting.
All right,
Like to
Second from, oh, Paul can take it.
I'll second it. Paul Sklar, seconding that
Second
motion.
from Paul. All right, and this will be a vote, name vote, and we'll go down the line. Jonathan,
Jonathan Kipp in favor.
thank you. Jen,
Jen Kenny in favor.
thank you. Christine,
Christine Patton in favor.
thank you. Kirsten,
Kirsten Hildenan in favor.
thank you. Steve,
Steve Bro in favor.
thank you. Paul,
Paul Sklar in favor.
and I, Chad Franz, vote in the favor. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for your time and for everyone who spoke tonight. Have a good evening. Be safe.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good night.